It's just a hot on the heels of the 55th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos. East Africa's largest city is today hosting the continent's business leaders, heads of states and development partners to advance the World Bank's Mission 300 Africa Energy Summit. This, in partnership with the African Development Bank, will chart Africa's course towards universal access to energy. Let's listen in to some of the opening remarks from the summit's leading host partners from earlier today.
This is mission critical. This is a continent that actually loses 3 to 4% of its GDP every year because of lack of electricity. This is a place where we have 571 million Africans without access to electricity. Talk less of whether it is reliable and affordable and accessible electricity, as Ajay was mentioning. This is a continent that accounts for 83% of all the 685 million people in the world, and the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations is here, and we are all driving with UN Secretary General to achieve SDG 7. So our mission here is to say we need everybody. We need the heads of state, and they are going to be here and talk about in a moment. We need the private sector. We need the multilateral development banks. We need the civil society. We need all of us working to do that. We are not just sitting here representing big institutions about money. It's not about us. It's about those that are not here. It's about those people who are small, medium-sized enterprises that are trying to just simply have access to electricity, small and medium-sized businesses to run our economies. That's it. It's the people that are not here. And we must listen and hear and feel their needs and make sure that this summit, it's an action-driven summit. Ajay laid it out very clearly. When he and I started this, we said, look, we can't do Mickey Mouse business. We can't have a situation where Africa doesn't have enough electricity. And so we set up this unprecedented partnership to do it, which is called Mission 300. And we are not alone. Raj is here. He joined us to do that. We have UN Secretary General here. Damilola is here from Sustainable Energy for All. We have the Global Energy Partnership for People and for the Planet. We have UN Secretary General. We have my dear friends here, President of Islamic Development Bank, Jabbar. We have Linjikan here. It's a partnership that will scale, that will transform. So for the heads of state that are going to be here, as you said for your question, what exactly are we going to do? First and foremost is their countries. So it's got to be country-led actions that actually shows that they are going to deliver electricity to their people. And secondly is that being their country, they have to increase the budget from their own fiscal budget to support infrastructure, power generation, power transmission, power distribution. They are the ones that are going to make sure that they feel the last mile connectivity there to make sure that people actually have access to electricity. Ajay was talking about the whole issue of reforms in his comment. Yes, the utilities have to be reformed. They have to reduce their technical and financial losses. We have to make sure that we have good, independent utilities, procurement systems that are transparent, that are competitive. We've got to make sure that we're looking at least cost basis of generating and transmitting energy. We've got to make sure, Ajay mentioned the whole issue of regional distribution. It's not just each country, it's regional transmission lines that make sure the regional power pools are working. So those are the kind of things that they have to do. And two things we are expecting from this particular summit is that the energy compact for each of the countries will be signed. We have 13 countries that are going to be part of that, and that will allow us to do 145 million people with access to electricity by 2030. Secondly, it's the declaration, which is the declaration of the summit, which all the heads of state will sign to show that the time has come for us to deliver on this. So all I'm trying to say is that if you want to deal with a big problem, it's not about the flag of the African Development Bank or the flag of the World Bank or of anybody else. We have the president of COP here, Babayev here, to tell you the global partnership here. It's not about what we plant. It's about how we work together. So this is all about working together. This is all about joining hands. This is all about pooling resources. And this is all about accountability. Because at the end of the day, you asked, right, the question was different. This is not a talking summit. At the end of the day, it's not what we say. We can do megawatts of talk all we want. It's going to be the megawatts of power that we deliver that actually matters. So it's an action-driven summit, and I want to thank you, all that are here today, for joining us in this to make sure that we can have Africa develop with pride, because you cannot develop in the dark, and we are determined it's time for Africa to solve this particular issue. Together, we can do exactly that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adesina. Ajay, as Dr. Adesina said, talk is cheap, right? This is an action-driven summit. What do you think are the sort of ideal outcomes over the next 2 days? What do you want to happen come this time tomorrow or by end of business tomorrow?
So, I mean, I can just summarize a lot of that. We're going to get these declarations, we're going to get the compacts from these countries, but what we need to do is the next phase of countries that have to have their energy compacts done. We need them to be finalized over the coming days, because this is only the first 12. The idea is not to exclude anybody else. It's phasing. There's only so much we can do of geospatial mapping, financial calculations, policy change. You got to do it in some phasing. The second piece is that there are a lot of people here from other multilateral development banks. We talked about the Islamic Development Bank and AIIB, but there's also development banks and others, commercial banks here, who will get a chance today to listen to these compacts and make sure that they can go back to their clients and represent with accuracy why this is an opportunity that should not be missed. That's the second. The energizing of the network, so to say, has got to happen. No puns intended on energy or network. That's the idea. And then the third part we've got to get here is that the private sector has got to get the faith and trust that this is real and serious. So let me just add one thought to that. The World Bank is going to be putting somewhere between $30 to $40 billion to work in this effort over the coming years. And the idea of putting so much of our IDA money, we had a very good IDA replenishment, which is part of this exercise. But the idea of putting so much of our money to work here is also to enable and make sure that these policy reforms that are being committed by governments actually get enacted. We will pay for results. We're not going to put the money up front and say, we trust that you will get the policy reforms made. We're going to give you the money to enable you to create the headroom that you need as a country to make that policy reform happen. And it's the same idea of working with the IMF to enable the RST dollars to be available to these countries to create the fiscal headroom. This is putting our money where our mouth is. Mm-hmm. And I would say that's going to be a very critical part of what has to happen over these coming 2 days. Then for a second, you've got to step back from all this and think about why are we doing this? Because otherwise we're going to get caught with the aspect of the tyranny of the small idea here, of this compact and that compact. The real reason we're doing all this is because we have a demographic boom on this continent. Young people are coming of age and they want a job. A job is not just a ticket out of poverty, it is a ticket into dignity. And a job is a state of mind. Poverty is not just a state of being, it destroys your mind. Mm-hmm. And that's what jobs do for people. You cannot have jobs without electricity. Electricity is a human right. It gives you energy to do what you need for education, healthcare, skilling, enabling of jobs, digitization. When people talk about digitizing Africa, one of the things we're planning to do during this exercise is to put cell phone towers into all the locations where we put up distributed solar energy or connect to satellites. Starlink, for example, can enable a lot to happen with digital connectivity. If we can connect 300 million people over the coming years, not just to electricity, but also to digital access, we can transform Africa's potential for jobs for young people over the coming decade. That's what we are here for. The idea of these 2 days is to excite everybody in this audience of that vision and make sure they can trust that we are putting our money where our mouth is, and this is not empty talk. That's the real objective of these 2 days.